Hey, I'm Mac. Welcome back to my channel. So if you've been following my channel for a while, you might have noticed a distinct lack of sponsor segments in my videos. This is not because I do not receive any offers from sponsors. I absolutely could do sponsor segments if I wanted to. There are several broad reasons why I do not. Number one, from my personal perspective as a viewer, I find sponsor segments incredibly irritating. I don't think this is controversial or a hot take. They're annoying. They're so awkward. They break the flow of the video, no matter how smooth the adoring, inexplicably upvoted top comment gushes the transition was. And they always seem to grow longer and longer over time. And that's just my personal opinion, okay? Number two, even if it really doesn't break the flow of that video, is that actually a better outcome? I thought that advertising was supposed to be clearly demarcated and separated from content. You don't have to spend that much time pulling at this thread to get the sweater to completely unravel. And number three, this is not my full-time job. I have a full-time job as a warehouse manager, so I'm under significantly less pressure to make ends meet via YouTube. I really want to emphasize that because I don't want the takeaway here to be that I'm morally superior or anything, because I'm not. Number four, once you have said yes to something that earns you money once, it becomes much more difficult psychologically to say no to it down the line. There is a tendency for extra money to become no longer extra, but necessary. And number five, at the end of the day, you're giving up control of what you do and do not say about a product or service. And the reason that sponsorships pay so well is because they know that it will be more effective to have you say it to the viewer than to have a normal ad inserted. So that issue just gets awfully murky for me, okay? Maybe some YouTubers out there really are just that passionate about their VPN service. After all, it totally secures your internet, is the most useful thing ever. And if you aren't using a VPN, you might as well be base jumping, right? Well, again, this runs into the fact that the information the creator is going to be presenting has to be approved by the sponsor's marketing department. And since marketing is a euphemism for lying that we've collectively decided is okay to do, the claims the creator makes in that segment are, and this just might shock you, likely to be exaggerated, deceptive, or outright false, either due to a lack of knowledge about the product they're selling or due to their commitment to being truthful with their viewers being negotiable if enough money is offered to them. Forgive my skepticism, but I have yet to hear a YouTuber hawking some VPN service accurately describe the very limited situations under which a VPN service will actually have security benefits. Because the vast majority of the time, a VPN does not improve the security of your internet connection. The situations where a VPN improves security are when the ISP that you are connecting to is less trustworthy than your VPN provider, such as when you're connected to a public Wi-Fi network. VPNs work by creating an encrypted tunnel between your computer and the VPN server, meaning that instead of seeing everything you are doing and everything you're looking at, your ISP just sees that you're using a VPN. Notice how none of this prevents you from being phished or otherwise hacked. Using a VPN also does not in and of itself protect your privacy. Browser fingerprinting and tracking cookies are largely unhindered by VPN usage, even if your IP address is hidden. And the VPN is perfectly capable of logging everything you do and providing that information to authorities or other entities if they so choose. You are simply choosing to trust the VPN instead of your ISP. On top of the misinformation about the benefits typically used to sell VPN services, what is typically left out of the pitch is the numerous services VPN usage is likely to make extremely inconvenient or impossible to access. If your VPN is located in another country, your bank is going to consider it just as suspicious when you attempt to log into your account via your VPN server as it would if someone randomly attempted to log into your account from that country. Multiply this times the number of accounts you regularly log into, and you're going to quickly find it extremely inconvenient to use a VPN on a regular basis. The two most important things that you can do to protect your online security are to enable two-factor authentication for all your accounts that offer it. And this should be with a physical security key like this one, or an authentication app, not SMS if at all possible, because SMS is not secure. And to get and use a password manager so that you are not reusing passwords or scribbling them all over the place or constantly forgetting them. And because I'm not sponsored by Dashlane, I'm going to inform you that Bitwarden is incredible. It has a free plan. The only features that the free plan does not offer are a authentication code generator and the ability to attach files to your password records. It works on iOS, Android, macOS, Windows, and it has extensions for Safari, Firefox, and even Chrome for the people that, much to my complete and utter bewilderment, continue to use Chrome. Great. Now you have no excuse to not use a password manager, and therefore no excuse to reuse passwords. So those two tasks we just accomplished will do far, far more for your security than anything else. In terms of privacy, I can't really help you much here, other than if you're one of the Chrome users that I just referred to, what are you doing? Seriously. Really, the only true use case for a VPN is circumventing geographic content restrictions. And even then, unless it's a live sports broadcast you're trying to access, you're probably better off getting a seed box and access to a private BitTorrent tracker. And no, I will not tell you where to find those or how to sign up for them. Maybe some of these YouTubers have truly managed to outsmart Big Grocery to find an economical way to make home-cooked meals without the incredibly challenging task of shopping for groceries to make a recipe. I mean, look at this home-cooked recipe that I could be making from HelloFresh, using this recipe that is literally publicly available on their website without an account that you can print out. Okay, I would have to find some way to source a clove of garlic, a lemon, 6 ounces of penne pasta, 4 ounces of cream sauce base, a zucchini, 1/4 ounce of parsley, 3 tablespoons of Parmesan cheese, and 10 ounces of chicken breast. Guys, that is literally impossible and hopelessly complicated. Where am I going to find all of those items? Like a food store? Where am I going to have time to go to this food store other than the trip I'm already going to have to make to buy the olive oil, butter, cooking oil, salt, and pepper that aren't included in my HelloFresh delivery? Who is going to cut the chicken for me? How do you even create chopped chicken? Do you chop it? No. I need my ingredients individually wrapped in plastic and shipped with ice packs to me. Don't worry about the packaging, made of plastic. It's totally recyclable. All you have to do is melt each ice pack, cut them open, empty the gel inside into another plastic bag, then place the plastic from the ice pack in with the rest of the plastic from your individually wrapped celery stalks into your recycling bin for a worker at the recycling center to throw in the trash for you, because it is low quality polyethylene, okay? And it's of no value because plastic is not recyclable. Unlike an aluminum can, which is infinitely recyclable and will end up back on a shelf as a new aluminum can in about 60 days through a process that is cheaper than creating new aluminum, a plastic bag cannot become another plastic bag because the process of recycling plastic always results in plastic of inferior quality to what was put in, and it is much more expensive than simply creating new plastic. As a result, the vast majority of plastic placed in recycling bins ends up in landfills. But they need you to believe that plastic is recyclable, because if you knew that plastic was actually not recyclable, the guilt might make you not buy things with plastic packaging, like HelloFresh meals. Anyway, I'm sure the economics totally work out though, given that this meal will cost nearly $6 given the $70 a month price tag of HelloFresh for 3 meals a week for 2 people. 10 ounces of chicken for 2 people? Not while I'm around. Okay, I mean, that might sound fucking exorbitant compared to how many meals you could make with that grocery budget, but it turns out that it's very expensive to ship pre-portioned climate bombs of ingredients around, even with the savings achieved by using intimidation and aggressive threat tactics to prevent your warehouse staff from unionizing and thereby demanding a living wage and decent working conditions. I mean, union-busting firms don't grow on trees, you know. So, that's what you're supporting with HelloFresh. The point is, in order for me to accept and satisfy the requirements of a sponsorship deal from something like Surfshark or HelloFresh, I would need to somehow either avoid doing an amount of research that would turn up those very important details, or pretend that I was unaware of them. And the concept of having a financial incentive motivating me to avoid researching a topic or to lie by omission is a level of ickiness that I cannot bring myself to be comfortable with. Not to mention the recurring nightmares I would have about all that single-use plastic being generated by HelloFresh. Just saying. But maybe these industries are just too high stakes and serious for me to consider for a sponsor. I mean, the choice to sign up for a VPN service or to make 3 meals a week in essentially the most environmentally disastrous way to gather and prepare food any human has come up with since our species has existed are both so impactful and not to be taken lightly. I really would prefer a sponsorship from something less important and more frivolous, like mental health treatment. So given that you're currently watching a YouTube video, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that you've almost certainly heard of BetterHelp, because they are one of the biggest spenders in terms of YouTube and podcast advertising. But in case you haven't, let's catch you up to speed. BetterHelp was founded in 2013 by a couple of tech bros with zero healthcare credentials, because apparently no industry exists that cannot be massively improved by tech getting involved in creating a platform that connects users with service providers, but takes a big fat cut of the payment to that service provider and none of the accountability or responsibility for the outcomes or for the working conditions of those providers, because oops, they're not our employees. They're an independent contractor that just happens to be wholly responsible for the core product of our business. It's really only in the tech industry that you see the raw combined power of having the ignorance to think you can do something better, the arrogance to not listen to experts telling you why you can't, and the sociopathy to not be troubled by the risks. BetterHelp claims to be, quote, the world's largest network of licensed, accredited, and experienced therapists who can help you with a range of issues, including depression, anxiety, relationships, trauma, grief, and more. With our therapists, you get the same professionalism and quality that you would expect from an in-office therapist, but with the ability to communicate when and how you want. The site offers this helpful little table to help us understand how the new, sophisticated BetterHelp service compares to the clearly obsolete traditional therapy model, because it's new, okay? That means it's better. If it's newer, it's better, okay? Ask anybody who bought a 2000 Mitsubishi Eclipse. If it's newer, it's better. Okay, also, I don't understand why they decided to call the convertible version of the Eclipse Spider. Like, why didn't they call it the Solar Eclipse? Dumb. Here, we can see that both BetterHelp and traditional therapy are provided by a licensed therapist. So, I guess that's good. I mean, I would certainly fucking hope. But then again, I realize that all kinds of unlicensed pseudo practitioners are out there, so I guess it is necessary to specify. Some of them are on BetterHelp. BetterHelp doesn't offer in-office visits, obviously, unlike traditional therapy. When you hover over that little information icon, it explains, quote, commute to the therapist's location, spend time in the waiting room, sit in their office, unquote, which certainly is one way of putting it, but I'm going to guess that it would have been counterproductive to their goals to say something to the effect of, simply travel to the office and have a face-to-face conversation without any technical support, lag, background noise, microphone issues, or network issues. Next, they list messaging at any time, which is great. That is a very reasonable expectation? Is it really asking too much of another human being to subject them to every single little thought that pops into your head as soon as it comes to you 24 hours a day? You can't do that with traditional therapy. What are you supposed to do in that case? Write it down and bring it up at your next session after you've had some time to think about it for a while? I mean, that's crazy. Listen, it is 3 a.m. and I'm fairly certain that going to high school as a gay teenager in Appalachia has caused me to consider unattainability as a proxy for sexual attractiveness. Damn it, where's my therapist? This is very important and extremely urgent. Am I the only one who thinks this is an insane thing to offer? Are therapists not also human beings with their own lives who might not like to be working 24/7? I don't know. Then it lists chat, phone, and video sessions, all of which sound like my worst nightmare, but I realize that I'm not most people, and I can't imagine that a chat session would be terribly effective in the first place. It also says it has easy scheduling. I mean, many traditional therapists have scheduling the exact same way as BetterHelp, but like, whatever. The next feature is digital worksheets, which it claims to have, unlike traditional therapy. I guess because in traditional therapy, they would actually give you like a paper worksheet. I don't know. Do they think that a digital worksheet is better than a paper one? I will take a paper one any day. I mean, weird flex, but okay. BetterHelp says they have group sessions, and then they put a mysterious question mark as to whether traditional in-office therapy could possibly have group sessions. Maybe what they mean by that is that not every therapist's office is going to have group sessions, but some do. Except by that logic, since not every BetterHelp therapist does group sessions, they should both have the question mark of shame, shouldn't they? Let's take a moment to picture what a video conferencing therapist's appointment would be like on a bad day. Now imagine a video conference group therapy session. Yeah. Now, this next feature is great. Smart provider matching. BetterHelp's got it, traditional therapy doesn't. Honestly, that's a great idea. Makes me think that maybe, in the traditional therapy universe, they should stop using dice to assign therapists to patients. And it's easy to switch providers. I'm not sure this is necessarily the best thing though, because therapy can take many sessions to really be effective. And if you're constantly switching providers, that's going to make it take even longer to become effective. And having it be super easy to switch providers is going to make you more likely to switch for like silly reasons or because you just haven't given them a chance yet. Finally, their last feature is that you can access therapy from anywhere. And I'm going to again question whether that's a good thing or not. Like maybe, just maybe some things should have a time and a place and not be taken anywhere. Just because you can take it everywhere doesn't mean that you should. There's a reason that therapists typically have offices and don't just conduct their sessions at Starbucks or in front of the 7-Eleven. What's strange about this service is that here in the FAQs, it doesn't give a single price. It provides a range of $65 to $90 a week, billed every 4 weeks. So that should actually say $260 to $360 a month, if you ask me, but I suppose that is not quite as attractive as a price. Despite this, when I went through the sign-up process, until it asked for a credit card, that is, it only said $90 a week or $360 a month. So I don't know where this $65 a week option is offered or how exactly you sign up for it. BetterHelp does not accept any form of insurance. This is in contrast to traditional therapy, which most health insurance plans will cover at least some number of appointments with a copay for, provided your deductible has already been met. With BetterHelp, you'd have to pay that entire $360. It's worth noting that this is indeed cheaper than office-based therapy, which, if you are paying for it out of pocket, typically is going to be somewhere around $150 to $180 a session, which would equal out to $900 to $1,080 per month. I do have to wonder, though, with that lower rate of compensation and BetterHelp also taking a cut of it, who are the therapists that are going to end up on BetterHelp? If a therapist could make more money in their own practice or at a group practice, why would they do BetterHelp? It's certainly worth considering what the effect on quality is likely to be. So in 2015, BetterHelp was acquired by telemedicine company Teladoc, for the surprisingly modest sum of $4.5 million, although it's more understandable when you put it into the context that BetterHelp at the time of the acquisition was bringing in less than $100,000 in revenue per month, or less than $1.2 million annually. However, in 2017, BetterHelp's revenue had risen to $27 million annually, and in 2018, that was up to nearly $60 million. How did they manage to achieve this level of growth so quickly? YouTube. The answer is YouTube. It's one thing to have a creator pretend that a VPN is something very important and something that they totally understand because they'll be making a large amount of money for doing so. But it's something else entirely when the product is mental health services. Not only is the mental health of the viewer being exploited, but also the mental health struggles of the creator are implicitly being used to sell the product, motivated by the additional $100 to $200 they'll earn if the viewer signs up for BetterHelp. There's something extremely unethical and just plain icky about that. I mean, is it really that different from having a YouTuber do a sponsored segment for like Cymbalta? And yet, that is not even close to the worst part of this story. On July 7th, 2023, the FTC, that's the Federal Trade Commission for the United States, issued a complaint against BetterHelp for some alarmingly serious privacy violations going back years. Let's go through that complaint. I have the complaint printed out here. I'm going to try to like summarize a little bit and hit the key points. But yeah, I'm just going to go straight through this. So first, it gives background about BetterHelp. And it points out that they have had their primary site, BetterHelp, since 2013. And then in 2017, they also opened up a site called Faithful Counseling, which is aimed at Christian users. And in August of 2017, they unveiled Pride Counseling as another site which caters to LGBT users. And they're going to be calling all of those collectively the multi-sites in this complaint. So they point out that users pay $60 to $90 a week for counseling through the service. To sign up for the service and become a paying user, an individual visiting one of the multi-sites must fill out a questionnaire answering detailed questions about the visitor's mental health. Upon completing the intake questionnaire, a visitor is prompted to create an account for the service by entering the visitor's name or nickname, email address, phone number, and emergency contact information. The visitor is then asked to enter credit card information to become a paying user. The respondent then utilizes the user's responses to the intake questionnaire to match the user with one of the respondent's more than 25,000 licensed therapists. Respondents' therapists provide users with mental health therapy via video conferencing, text messaging, live chat, and audio calls. Respondents' primary website and app, BetterHelp, has seen explosive growth over the last few years, adding 118,000 US users in 2018, 158,000 in 2019, and over 641,000 in 2020. Since its inception, BetterHelp has signed up over 2 million users, and today it has over 374,000 active users in the United States. As a result, Respondent earned $345 million in revenue in 2020 and over $720 million in revenue in 2021. In 2017, the Respondent delegated most decision-making authority over its use of Facebook's advertising services to a junior marketing analyst who was a recent college graduate, had never worked in marketing, and had no experience and little training in safeguarding consumers' health information when using that information for advertising. In doing so, Respondent gave the junior marketing analyst carte blanche to decide which visitors and users' health information to upload to Facebook and how to use that information. This same individual, who now holds the title Senior Marketing Analyst, continues to oversee Respondent's use of Facebook's advertising tools. Respondent provided this marketing analyst with little training on how to protect visitors and users' health information and connected with advertising until 2021. In fact, Respondent has purported to provide privacy training to its employees since 2015, but it was not until 2021 that Respondent gave them any training specific to its business or advertising. In connection with the advertisement and sale of the service, Respondent has disseminated or caused to be disseminated false and deceptive statements about its use and disclosure of consumers' health information. Respondent also disseminated or caused to be disseminated misleading and deceptive representations regarding its compliance with federal health privacy laws. Visitors and users relied on these representations and were misled as a result. So here are the deceptive statements about privacy on their website. Upon arriving at any of the multi-sites, a visitor is immediately prompted to begin the intake questionnaire. For example, on the BetterHelp website, a visitor begins the intake questionnaire by selecting whether he or she is looking for individual, couples, or teen therapy as is shown. After making a selection, the visitor is ushered through the intake questionnaire, which asks an array of questions. For many visitors, these questions include whether the visitor is experiencing overwhelming sadness, grief, or depression, whether the visitor has been having thoughts that the visitor would be better off dead or hurting yourself in some way, whether the visitor is currently taking any medication, whether the visitor has problems or worries about intimacy, or whether the visitor has previously been in therapy. The intake questionnaire also asks whether the visitor identifies as a member of the Christian faith, shuttling such individuals to faithful counseling. Similarly, the intake questionnaire takes those who identify as members of the LGBTQ community to Pride counseling. And respondent ushers teenagers to teen counseling, where teenage visitors provide their responses to the intake questionnaire before respondent obtains parental consent. Before respondent obtains parental consent. It's not good. Asking them questions before they have consent. It's cool. It's great. Respondent has included privacy assurances throughout the intake questionnaire. Until November 2021, each multi-site displayed a banner at the top of each question explaining that the respondent is merely asking for some general and anonymous background information about you and the issues you'd like to deal with in online therapy, so that the visitor can be matched with the most suitable therapist for you. As visitors proceeded through the intake questionnaire, respondent includes additional periodic privacy assurances. From at least August of 2017 to December of 2020, when a visitor reached the question as to whether the visitor was taking medication, the visitor was shown the statement, "Rest assured, any information provided in this questionnaire will stay private between you and your counselor." In December of 2020, respondent changed the statement to read, "Rest assured, this information will stay private between you and your counselor." And in January of 2021, respondent changed it again to state, "Rest assured, your health information will stay private between you and your counselor." In October of 2021, respondent removed this representation altogether. After being presented with these repeated promises of privacy, millions of visitors, including those that became users, filled out the intake questionnaire and shared their health information with the respondent. Despite the aforementioned assurances of privacy, respondent disclosed visitors' and users' intake questionnaire responses, as well as their email addresses and IP addresses, to Facebook for advertising purposes, as well as for Facebook's own purposes. So they promised all this privacy about this intake questionnaire, and then they just fucking shared it to Facebook for advertising and for Facebook's own purposes. It goes on. From at least August of 2017 to as recently as December 2020, respondent gave additional privacy assurances to Faithful Counseling, Pride Counseling, and Teen Counseling visitors to induce them to sign up for their service, stating that their email address would be kept strictly private and never shared, sold, or disclosed to anyone. Tens of thousands of visitors provided respondent with their email address and signed up for Faithful Counseling, Pride Counseling, and Teen Counseling after viewing this privacy assurance. Respondent understood that its disclosure of visitors' email addresses in association with BetterHelp would reveal that visitors were seeking mental health treatment through the service, and respondent understood that consumers would want to keep this information private. In fact, a senior BetterHelp employee acknowledged at an investigational hearing conducted by FTC staff that individuals want to keep the fact that they're in therapy private, and at times even keep their identity secret from their therapists. Nevertheless, respondent disclosed the email addresses of thousands of these visitors to various third parties for advertising purposes and the third party's own purposes, thereby revealing to the third parties that these visitors were seeking and or receiving mental health treatment via the service. In addition to making false representations, respondent has pushed visitors and users into handing over their health information before they have ever had a chance to read any privacy disclosures. Upon visiting any of the multi-sites, users are urged to begin the intake questionnaire and hand over their health information. At the same time, They are repeatedly presented with the aforementioned privacy assurances as discussed. By contrast, respondent linked to the privacy policy in small, low-contrast writing that is barely visible at the bottom of the page. In September of 2020, respondent added the below banner to the bottom of every page of its multi-sites until a visitor closed it, which stated, "We use cookies to help the site function properly, analyze usage, and measure the effectiveness of our ads. We never sell or rent any information you share with us. Read our privacy policy to learn more." Despite including a link to the privacy policy, the banner effectively dissuaded visitors from reading the privacy policy by stating, until October of 2020, that the respondent would never sell or rent any information that you share with us. In May of 2021, the respondent revised the banner and added the following underlined language: "We use third-party cookies and web beacons to help the site function properly, analyze usage, target and measure the effectiveness of our ads. Read our privacy policy to learn more and go to cookie preferences to manage your settings." But this banner still did not inform visitors that respondent would use and disclose their health information for advertising, or that third parties would be able to use visitors' information for their own purposes. It was not until October of 2021 that respondent revised the banner to state that it discloses visitors' IP addresses and other personal identifiers for advertising, and offered visitors an opportunity to opt out of the disclosures via the banner. Those visitors and users that persevered and read respondent's privacy policy were presented with additional deceptive statements about respondent's use and disclosure of health information. From August of 2013 to November of 2018, respondents' privacy policies represented that it would use and disclose visitors' and users' email addresses, IP addresses, enrollment in the service, and intake questionnaire responses for certain purposes, including to connect them with therapists and to operate the services. Notably, these privacy policies made no mention of using or disclosing this information for advertising purposes, and they said nothing about permitting third parties to use this information for their own purposes. In November of 2018, respondent updated the privacy policy to state affirmatively that it would use and disclose this information only for limited purposes, such as to operate and improve the service. These limited purposes did not include using or disclosing the information for advertising or disclosing the information to third parties for their own purposes. In 2019, the respondent revised its privacy policy again, stating that it might use this health information for advertising. But the policy continued to say that the respondent would only disclose this information to third parties for certain stated limited purposes, which did not include advertising or third parties' own purposes. In September of 2020, respondent revised the privacy policy yet again, finally stating that it may both use and disclose visitors' and users' information for advertising. But even then, the privacy policy continued to claim that the respondent would disclose this information to third parties only for the stated limited purposes, which did not include the third party's own purposes. So here's what they disclosed to Facebook. First, respondent compiled lists of visitors and users' email addresses, which it then uploaded to Facebook to match these individuals to their Facebook user accounts in order to target them and others like them with advertisements. In 2017 and 2018, respondent uploaded lists of over 7 million visitors and users' email addresses to Facebook. Facebook matched over 4 million of these visitors and users with their Facebook user IDs, linking their use of the service for mental health treatment with their Facebook accounts. In January 2017 through October 2018, respondent uploaded over 170,000 visitors and users' email addresses to Facebook, retargeting these individuals and targeting potential new users with advertisements for the service. In January of 2018 through October of 2018, respondent uploaded over 15,000 users' email addresses to Facebook to find and target new potential users with advertisements. And in October of 2017, respondent uploaded the email addresses of all their current and former users, over 2 million people, to Facebook, targeting them all with advertisements or to refer their Facebook friends to the service. From 2013 to 2020, respondents shared visitors and users' email addresses, IP addresses, and records known as events with Facebook. These events automatically tracked certain actions of each visitor and user on the multi-sites, such as when they answered certain questions on the intake questionnaire in a certain way, or when a visitor enrolled in the service to become a user. Respondent recorded and automatically disclosed these events to Facebook through web beacons respondent had placed on each of the multi-sites. Respondent disclosed visitors and users' IP addresses, email addresses, and or other persistent identifiers to Facebook alongside the events so that Facebook could match the information with the visitors and users' Facebook accounts for advertising. Several examples are listed. In January of 2018, respondent disclosed to Facebook that over 70,000 visitors had signed up for accounts but had not become paying users through an event denoting as much in order to retarget them with advertisements for the service. In November of 2018 through March of 2020, the respondent disclosed to Facebook over 1.5 million users and visitors' previous therapy gathered through their affirmative responses to the intake questionnaire question, "Have you been in counseling or therapy before?" to retarget the visitors with advertisements and optimize respondents' advertisements. In October 2018 through November of 2020, respondent used and shared over 3.5 million visitors and users' good or fair financial status gathered through the intake questionnaire with Facebook to optimize respondents' advertisements and to find potential new users and target them with advertisements. January through December of 2020, respondents shared with Facebook the fact that over 180,000 visitors had become paying users through an event denoting they had entered credit card information after completing the intake questionnaire to optimize respondents' advertisements and to find potential new users and target them with advertisements. Respondent labeled the intake questionnaire responses concerning prior therapy and financial status with anonymous event titles before giving them to Facebook. However, in July of 2018, the previously mentioned inexperienced and insufficiently trained junior marketing analyst whom respondent had put in charge of Facebook advertising revealed certain events' true meaning to Facebook via the Facebook employee that serviced respondents' advertising account. For example, though an affirmative response to the question, "Have you been in counseling or therapy before?" was coded as "add to wish list," the analyst revealed to Facebook that this event meant that the, quote, "user completes questionnaire marking that they have been in therapy before," thereby disclosing millions of visitors and users' prior therapy history to Facebook. And here's what they shared with other third parties. In January of 2019, respondent disclosed to Snapchat the IP addresses and email addresses of approximately 5.6 million visitors to retarget them with advertisements for the service. And from August 2019 through to September of 2020, respondent disclosed visitors' email addresses to Pinterest for advertising. And here's additional use of health information for advertising. From November of 2017 through October of 2020, respondent used information concerning approximately 600,000 Pride counseling visitors or users' mental health statuses and their connection with the visitors' and users' LGBTQ identities to optimize future advertisements for the service on Facebook. Respondent gathered this information through the intake questionnaire whenever a Pride counseling visitor or user revealed that the visitor or user's LGBTQ identity is contributing to their mental health concerns. Respondent used Facebook to identify characteristics and interests common among these visitors and users to then target future advertisements for the service on Facebook to individuals with similar characteristics and interests. Okay. Then, in disclosing visitors and users' health information to Facebook and other third parties, respondent did not contractually limit how the third parties could use and disclose the data other than merely agreeing to these third parties' general terms of service, which either placed no restrictions on the third party's use and disclosure of the information or specifically permitted the third parties to use the information for their own purposes. And it is confirmed now that Facebook has, in fact, used the visitor and user information it received from the respondent for its own purposes, including improving its advertising products, tracking suspicious activity on its platforms, and research and development. Further, though respondent has deleted some of the visitor and user information it disclosed to third parties from those third parties' advertising platforms, this deletion did not remove the information from those third parties' underlying databases. And then, so now it's talking about the responses. Respondent scripted the following false responses which customer service representatives provided to respondents' customers. Number one, they said, quote, "At BetterHelp, we are fully committed to protecting data and will not pass any personally identifiable information and or protected health information to external entities, including our third-party partners." That was false. And, quote, "Your protected health information and personally identifiable information is protected and not exposed to Facebook." False. Several health insurance and patient advocacy companies representing tens of thousands of users contacted Respondent looking for assurance that users' health information had not been shared with any third parties. Senior BetterHelp employees answered each such inquiry with a variation on the same falsehood, claiming again and again that Respondent did not share any health information with any third parties. From September 2013 to December of 2020, Respondent displayed seals in proximity to seals provided by third parties to the Respondent, implying Respondent's purported compliance with HIPAA, a law that only contains one P in the acronym, okay? It is HIPAA, okay? It is Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, okay? It's got two A's and one P. Just thought I'd add that in there. By displaying the HIPAA seals on every page of the multi-sites, Respondent signaled to consumers that a government agency and or other third party had reviewed Respondent's privacy and information security practices and determined that they met HIPAA's requirements. In addition, Respondent represented to consumers that it was in fact HIPAA certified, with its customer service representatives informing customers that, quote, "You will be able to see our HIPAA certification at the bottom of our web pages." However, no government agency or other third party reviewed Respondent's information practices for compliance with HIPAA, let alone determined that the practices met the requirements of HIPAA. In addition, hundreds of Respondent's therapists are not subject to HIPAA, and the identifiable health information of users who engage with those therapists is therefore not protected by HIPAA. Further, Respondent does not even know which of its therapists are or are not subject to HIPAA, and it does not know which data are or are not protected by that law. It's getting a little snarky. In December of 2020, after receiving a civil investigative demand from the commission, Respondent removed the HIPAA seals from the multi-sites. Outrageous. And so as a result, this is the final decision in order. And among other things, it requires that BetterHelp pay a $7.8 million fine to the commission. And it bans them from using that type of information for advertising and requires them to do a bunch of compliance stuff. And that's why you probably shouldn't use BetterHelp. And that's why you shouldn't take sponsorships from BetterHelp, because that's pretty outrageous, pretty shocking. I really don't have anything to add to that. I had no idea how bad that was. I guess I just didn't imagine that it would be as egregious as it was. It's pretty horrifying. And yeah, unless you really go through this document and look at each count against them, you kind of don't realize how insanely horrible their privacy practices were and what they were just selling. Although, honestly, this type of thing is more common than you might expect, unfortunately. So don't use BetterHelp. This video is not sponsored by BetterHelp. I've been Mac. Peace out. Bye!